Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will learn Tosfos Dibra Maschul Kfar Alpia, as well as the next Tosfos Shivo Mechza Pater, since some of Farshim see them as one Tosfos, and they do speak about the same thing. Let's begin by looking at the chart of the Gemara, so we could see what Tosfos is coming to talk about. So here in the Gemara, we presented a case of Kfar Alpia. If somebody threw a basket from the Rishus HaYachid to the Rishus HaRabim, and he threw the basket upside down. So this is the part of the Gemara that Tosfos is coming to talk about and explain. And let's see the general outline of Tosfos. In the Gemara, we learned the din of when a person threw a basket upside down from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. And over here, the Tosfos will argue with Rashi and explain that this is referring to a basket that's 6 tefachim wide, and explain both cases. Rashi says that we're talking about the basket that's not 6 tefachim wide. Tosfos will argue with Rashi and explain that we are talking about the basket that is 6 tefachim wide, and then he'll explain each of the cases in the teaching of Abaye and Rava. The case when it's Shiva Umashahu, that the person is chayiv. If it's 7 and a mashu tefachim high, then the person is chayiv. And if the basket is Shiva Umechza Pater, if it's 7.5 tefachim high, then he's Pater. Tosfos will explain each of these cases based on saying that the basket is 6 tefachim wide. And what comes out over here is that it comes out that the discussion remains about the basket being a Rishus HaYachid. In the first teaching of Abaye, the discussion was about the basket being a Rishus HaYachid. According to Tosfos, this teaching is also about the basket being a Rishus HaYachid, as opposed to Rashi, where the first teaching is about the basket being a Rishus HaYachid, and the second teaching is about the basket coming to rest partially in a Makom P'tur. So that's just a difference that comes out as a result of the way Tosfos understands it. So let's see Tosfos now in the flowchart form. So we spoke about if he turned it on its top and he threw the basket into the Rishus HaRabim. So Tosfos begins by bringing something from the Riva, and he says it seems to Riva that it's referring to the basket that's 6 tefachim wide. We're talking about the basket that is 6 tefachim wide, and now he's going to go on to explain why when it's Shiva Umashu he's chayiv, why when it's 7 and something tefachim high, when the basket is 7 and a little more high, the person will be chayiv, and we're going to refer to it as 7.1 just for clarity. So Tosfos says, and when it's 7 and something, 7.1, he's chayiv, because when it comes within 3 tefachim, the walls aren't 10 tefachim high. So let's see what happened here. He has the basket that's 7.1 tefachim high. Now, when he throws it, before it comes to rest, when it's 2.9 tefachim off the ground, because we say lavid when it's less than 3 tefachim, so we're going to refer to that for clarity as 2.9. So when it's 2.9 tefachim from the ground, the walls aren't 10 tefachim high, because we have 2.9 and 7.1 for a total of 10. But that also includes the base of the basket, and we're not going to include the base of the basket. So it comes out, so let's just say the base of the basket takes up a half a tefach. So it comes out that 7.1 plus 2.9 is 10, but when we remove a half a tefach, we're left with 9.5 tefachim. And Tosfos continues and explains, and the base doesn't count because we need walls that are 10 tefachim high. The walls need to be 10 tefachim high, and like Tosfos will explain in a moment, and otherwise we don't say lavid. So he continues on and supports what he's saying by addressing a question. And he says, even though if the basket itself is 10 tefachim high, we include the base. Generally, we do include the base. If we have a basket that's 10 tefachim high, we said it in the previous Gemara, it's considered a Rishus HaYachid. Tosfos brings a different support for this. Like we said earlier about the house whose inside isn't 10 tefachim high. We said a house whose inside is not 10 tefachim high, but with the roof it is. The top of it is a Rishus HaYachid. And therefore, if a person threw a basket that's 10 tefachim high, we look at it as a Rishus, just like we said in the previous teaching from Abaye. So how come here we're not including the base? As Tosfos explains, nevertheless, since it's through lavid, the way we're getting over here, the height of 10 tefachim is only because of lavid. It will only work if there's a total of 10 tefachim of walls, since we only say lavid by walls. What Tosfos is saying here is that the idea of lavid, that we extend the walls and we view them as if there are taller walls now, as opposed to walls that are 7.1 tefachim. We want to view them as walls that are 10 tefachim. We'll only say that in the context of creating a Rishus HaYachid. We won't say it just by a regular object that's upside down. It has to be that the discussion at hand is that we're going to create a Rishus HaYachid. Only then will we say lavid in a way that the walls are viewed as becoming longer, and it creates a Rishus. And therefore, it's only going to be done. We're only going to say lavid if, as a result of lavid, the walls themselves alone, besides the base, will be 10 tefachim high. So this is really the main part of Tosfos, and we're going to explain it. Both of these arrows together. What Tosfos is saying here is that we're not including the base to let Lavud take effect, the only way Lavud can take effect is if through Lavud there will be a total of 10 tefachim height in walls. Only then will Lavud take effect. So therefore it comes out that Lavud will not take effect over here, and therefore the person's chayiv, because it only comes to rest when it actually lands on the ground, and then it's just a regular object. Although it's 6 tefachim wide, so it has the 4x4 in width, like we said a circle, we need 6 tefachim, but it doesn't have the height of 10 tefachim, it's only 7.1. And Tosfos continues and brings a proof to what he just said, that we only say Lavud by walls in the context of creating a rishus. And he says two things. Number one, like Rashi explained, we only say Lavud by walls, we don't say Lavud by other things. And Tosfos takes it to mean only in the context of making a rishus hayachid. And number two, we don't say Lavud when it's right side up. When the person threw the basket right side up, we didn't say Lavud. So clearly we only say Lavud by walls, and Tosfos says, so the walls need to be upside down, number one, and number two, it needs to be in the context of creating a rishus hayachid. Now Tosfos moves on to explain what will be when it's 7.5 tefachim. Why then is the person potter? So this is already the next Tosfos, and Tosfos says, when it's 7.5, he's potter, because when it comes within 3 tefachim, there are walls that are 10 tefachim besides the base. When it's 7.5, it means we're going to say 7.2. So we're going to look at the base as being 0.1 now, over here. So when it's 7.2, so if we remove 0.1 for the base, we're left with 7.1, plus the 2.9 of Lavud, so we have a total of 10 tefachim of walls. And that's why we say Lavud in that case. And Tosfos continues and explains, and so it's a rishus hayachid, and it's considered to be resting at that time. So when it comes within 3 tefachim of the ground, when it's 2.9 tefachim off the ground, we now view it as a rishus hayachid, and it came to rest. So it's the same as when a person threw the basket, which is 10 tefachim high and 6 tefachim wide, which you already said earlier, he's going to be potter, because he threw, according to Tosfos, from rishus hayachid to another rishus hayachid, through a rishus harabim. So too here, when he threw the basket at 7.2 tefachim high, he threw it upside down into the rishus harabim. We say when it comes 2.9 tefachim off the ground, it is now a rishus hayachid, and he threw from rishus hayachid to another rishus hayachid through the rishus harabim, and he is potter. Tosfos now supports this by addressing a question, and he said, and he's not chayiv anymore, even though afterwards it falls to the ground, and it's not anymore rishus hayachid. A question could be asked, although when it's 2.9 tefachim from the ground, it's a rishus hayachid, and therefore he's potter. However, the basket then falls to the ground, and when it falls to the ground and comes to rest the second time, it's not a rishus hayachid anymore. It's only 7.2 tefachim high. So Tosfos responds to that and addresses that by saying, and he's not chayiv anymore, even though afterwards it falls to the ground, and it's not anymore rishus hayachid, and so it's an object that came to rest in the rishus harabim. So Tosfos doesn't explain it; he just says he's not chayiv anymore, even though afterwards we have a regular object coming to rest. And the Tosfos Rosh explains a little more, and basically the point is we only view it as having one hanacha. So once it had the original hanacha, we don't anymore look at the next hanacha that takes effect when it actually lands and comes to rest on the ground. And now there's one more point that Tosfos brings up over here, and that is he addresses why we're only saying when it's 6 tefachim wide and not less. He says, but if it's not 6 tefachim wide, if the basket were not to be 6 tefachim wide, in the way Rashi says it, so Tosfos says then even if it's 7.5, he is chayiv because we only say Lavud by walls. Rashi says when it's not 6 tefachim wide, we still say Lavud. Tosfos says we will not say Lavud because we only say Lavud by walls. And what he means when he says walls over here, he means walls of a rishus. Tosfos holds we do not say Lavud by a basket, not only when it's right side up, but even if it's upside down, unless through Lavud we will create a rishus hayachid. If there's no issue over here of creating a rishus hayachid, we will not say Lavud and extend the walls. Tosfos concludes, and there are only walls if there's an area that's 4x4. And we only look at them as mechitzas, walls in the context of walls of a rishus hayachid. And otherwise they are just like an object, and we don't say Lavud. We don't look at the walls any differently than an object. So just like if the basket is right side up, we don't say Lavud. Even if it's upside down, we won't say Lavud. The difference between when we do say Lavud and don't say Lavud has nothing to do with whether there are physically walls or not. It has to do with whether there are walls of a rishus hayachid. So to summarize, Tosfos explains that if it's 7.1, the person is not going to be chayiv because we need, in order to say Lavud and create walls that are 10 tefachim high, we have to have it all in the walls. The walls need to be 10 tefachim high. We cannot include the base. And since the base takes up some space, we don't anymore have 7.1 plus 2.9. We have a little less. So we have less than 10 tefachim. So it's not anymore rishus hayachid. Rather, it's an object. And Tosfos proves that we only say Lavud by walls of a rishus and and we won't say love it in other cases. And the next part of Tosfos, he says, but when it's 7.5 tefachim, then we have 10 tefachim of walls, because when we remove the base, let's say it's 0.1, so 7.2 plus 2.9 is 10.1. Remove 0.1 for the base, we have 10 tefachim of walls. We will say lavud, we did create a rishus. And Tosfos addresses a side question, which is, but later the object comes to rest. He says we don't look at that. We only look at it, the original resting through lavud. And the last part of Tosfos was, he says that we will not say lavud in the case that Rashi says, when it's less than 6 tefachim wide, because if it's less than 6 tefachim wide, these are just physical walls of a basket, but they're not walls of a rishus hayachid, and we only say lavud by walls of a rishus. We do not say lavud by the bottom of an object, and not even by the walls of an object, if it's just regular walls of an object and there's no discussion of a rishus that's involved.